It is a notorious fact that Karamoja sub-region in northern Uganda has historically suffered what we call double jeopardy. You may remember from your history that during the colonial days and post-colonial, the early post-colonial days, Karamoja was in fact rendered as a deportation center, that those who disagreed with the colonial regime or even the post-colonial regime were deported to Karamoja. You may remember the likes of Abu Mayanja, among others, to an extent that we had unfortunate statements by some leaders who, said that we shall not wait for Karamoja to develop. Well, in this day and era, we still have questions around the Karamoja sub-region. We know that, just not so long ago, they experienced famine. Aspects of insecurity continue to grapple with the sub-region, but also the issues around the relief items that government did see as an intervention to, try and emancipate and give affirmative action to the people of Karamoja. That shall inform phase 1. Phase 2 shall be basically around the USA Africa Summits on Democracy. You know that as we speak, Her Excellency Kamala Harris is set to visit the capital of Dar es Salaam and many other capitals in the African continent. Well, basically to understand the aspect of, democracy and what entails the same. Viewers, I'm joined by a panel of immaculate young people to put all this into perspective. And it's now my singular honor to introduce them to you. And in no particular order is the only gentleman on the show, the Right Honorable Speaker Emeritus of Chambogo University Students Guild and the current Speaker of UNSA. Peterson Kanyesigye, thank you for making the time to be here. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. I am Peterson Kanyesigye, the Uganda National Students Association Speaker. And I am so much privileged and honored to be part of this show. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kanyesigye. The second panelist is Peace Namabasaba. Peace is a student of law at Makerere University. Peace, thank you for sparing the time.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
We are happy to have you as well. Yes, and next to Peace is a lady who at least we shall be privileged to hear from her because she hails from Nabilatuk district, which is in Karamoja sub-region. And I also know that she is a development practitioner, policy, climate change, and human rights activist. Nancy Otyang is the name, and thanks for sparing the time, Nancy.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
How do you feel? I love the Karamoja beads.
Yeah, I had to, put on something that speaks to the topic.
Yeah, thank you. You look very amazing, I must say. And next to myself is Hamirah Kobusingye. Hamirah is a justice activist and founder of the Climate Justice Africa. Hamirah, thank you for making the time.
Thank you very much. Like you heard, my name is Hamirah Kobusingye, and I am a climate and human rights defender. I specify with climate justice and gender justice. And I think that's why I'm here today.
Wow, thank you. And just to kick us off right away, Preta, just to put into perspective the aspect of, I did give a hint in my preamble, but I think there is much more context involved to it. How does Karamoja find itself not just as a second-class citizen region, but rather, as a third-class citizen region? And this is with regards to the colonial era, but also post-colonial era. So just the historical context of how Karamoja has been treated in Uganda.
All right, thank you for that question. The Karamoja question is not a new one. It is not one that has emerged in the 2000s. It has almost been 2 centuries, and the Karamoja question has always existed. During the colonial times, when they were developing the maps of the British colonies, the Karamoja question emerged. The geographers had the question, should we put Karamoja in the colonial British part of Uganda or Kenya? Because the Karamoja sub-region in its characteristics is more similar to its neighbors across the border. They are both nomads. It's the same climate, similar ways of life, and all of that. And also, Uganda, as it was then and is mostly right now, was a region of kingdoms and chiefdoms. The Karamoja sub-region did not have such centralized power. So, of course, as we all know now, finally Karamoja became part of Uganda, and since then we have always been faced with the Karamoja question. Then during the independence times with Obote and Edward Mutesa at the helm of Ugandan power, the Karamoja question still emerged. As he said, it was used as a deportation center for regime dissidents and people who were imprisoned and exiled. And here's the funny thing. These people were referred to be exiled, yet they were in the same country. Because the Karamoja sub-region is in Uganda, but people were sent from Buganda mostly to Karamoja in exile, with the implication that somehow Karamoja was not part of Uganda. In many cases that are covered in our early history as a country, the Expati Matovus, the Chiwanukas, and all of that, many of them were exiled in Karamoja. And, you know, with each change of power that comes, we have seen the Karamoja question emerging, and I think mainly going unanswered. And I think that's why we're here today.
Yeah. Wow, amazing context. Nancy, most of us are speaking from, you would say, the fence,
Yeah.
but you are part of the community. You hail from that region.
Yeah.
I don't know, what is your own perspective regarding how Karamoja as a sub-region has been historically treated, or how it finds itself where it is today?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think being from the region and growing up from there and being born from the soil, I think Karamoja issues are mostly internal, right? And when she was talking about geography, we still have sub-tribes like the Pokot, for example, who do not know where they belong. They have dual citizenship, right? We have those that say they are both Kenyan and Ugandan. So when there's an issue in Uganda, they run to Kenya, right? And the current phase of insecurity that is happening right now is mostly because of the Pokot. And when they raid the cows, they run to Kenya. So it makes it very hard to even trace. And then also the other thing is that they speak a completely different dialect from the rest of the sub-tribes in the region, which makes it very hard to even relate, right? So it's mostly, I think most of our issues are very, very internal, in that I feel like we've been forced to unite as Karamojongs, and then without addressing the actually internal issues. Like, for example, the differences in terms of even culture itself. Like the Pokot and the Karamojongs and the other sub-tribes are actually really different in terms of cultural practices as well. And then the language, of course. And then generally everything that they do is a little bit different from the other Karamojongs. Yes, we are nomads. That could probably, I feel like that's really small in terms of, trying to put us and group us in one. And when I feel like when they're addressing so many issues in Karamoja, they generalize. They do not, put in a bit of context to go and understand, so what are the needs of the Pokot? What do they want, right? Are they more Kenyan than Ugandan? And then we've also had, internally, we've had lots of, questions coming up, and most of the local leaders, I would not go into the political leaders, but we have like elders, who are mostly they act like our kingdoms, or our kings or our queens, in the region. So they've been sort of contemplating that Karamoja does not belong. It should just be a state, a sovereign state, because like it's so alienated from Uganda and also from the neighboring countries. We do not know where we belong really. And now that you've given me a bit of context, it makes sense that even in the past, that is what used to happen. They would literally deport people in a country, in the same country, right? In a region that actually belongs in the same country. So it makes a little bit of sense in that. So internally, we are very, very divided. And also externally, we are not, we're not put into one unit like Ugandans, I would say. So I feel like, yeah, it's more internal, but also there are external factors that are present. So yeah, I think we need to really address the internal factors in Karamoja. That means we need well-structured local leaders, which we do not have right now. So for some aspects, we would reach out to the local leaders, then others will go political. And then, so there's like a whole uncoordinated leadership system in Karamoja that needs to first be organized. And then we agree what unites us as Karamojons, including the Kokot. And do they actually want to be part of the Karamoja, the Karamojons in Uganda? Are they Ugandan? Are they not Ugandan? So it's basically a whole mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how to perceive that, but I think that we should be able to live beyond, you know, I am a J, I am a Kokot, I am this. I mean, at the end of the day, we are all humanity. And I think it shouldn't matter, you know, what kind of tribe you perhaps want to associate yourself with. But, well, Peterson, let me hear from you, your own perspective regarding Karamoja and why it finds itself today, you know, struggling to put itself on the same pedal with the rest of the country. I mean, to what do we owe these factors?
Yeah, well, as we all know that in a pastoralism land, usually fights and cattle raiding is a usual thing. It is very inevitable. So it even in Western Uganda before, in areas of people where the cattle keepers, like Chevura, Isinjo, usually there were a lot of cattle raiding. And that was because of this free range system of grazing. Like the land is open for everyone to occupy. You can take your cattle wherever you want to graze. So it is the same to Karamoja. So the fact that these guys are pastoralists, everyone never wants a neighbor to have more cattle than the rest. That fight is always there. So the fact that I have little cattle compared to her will force me to maybe to go and raid. And usually it is their mentality as cattle keepers that they always have to compete in numbers of cattle. So in that process, let's say because in Karamoja we all know that it is an arid region, so it experiences a lot of drought, and that affects so much cattle. We find a lot of cattle is dying, a lot of livestock is lost, and because of that, when people lose cattle, they are forced to do cattle raiding for them to replace what they lost.
Right, just supplement.
So, yes. So because of that, you find these things are so hard to solve. So it all comes to climatic problems. So if may I believe as Ugandan government, there is a lot that has to be done to curb all this. Maybe like you had talked about the relief items. To me, I don't think the relief items are any, not even 50% to solve all these challenges that are in Karamoja. Because like they said, they had provided goats, and most of these goats died because they are not able to adopt the conditions.
It was a different breed.
Yes, different breeds. So you clearly see that these are not the means that can be used to solve the challenges that are in Karamoja. We need long-term solutions.
Yeah.
Maybe we had heard of Karamoja International Disarmament and Development Integration, something like that, program. Which was meant to disarm and maybe also help in development of Karamoja. I think it was a nice program that had come up, but it was not fully implemented on ground. It is just stopped on the way. And for the few things it did, it had come up with tanks, construction of tanks, construction of water dams to provide water even in dry seasons. So I believe such programs, if such programs are introduced in the region, then maybe you could finally come out with the best solutions for this.
Yeah.
All right. So to yours, it's about government being much more strategic in its approach,
Yes.
and not having sort of short-lived tactics on how to curb either the climate issue or even the terms of giving the people an alternative maybe livelihood, right?
Yeah.
And thank you, Hamirah. Still the same question. How does Karamoja find itself where it is today?
Thank you very much. So for me, I believe that the rest of Uganda has had the chance to learn and grow into the peace, the civilization, the whatever we know for these 60 years. Now, Karamoja didn't get that chance. I think for all the past years, Karamoja has been having representatives from different regions of the country to present them in the ministerial positions. So I believe I'm a very big advocate for education and sensitization. And I believe Karamoja did not get the chance that we all have to understand what we are dealing with now. And at this point, when the rest of us have developed 60 years into development, we expect them to catch up as fast as possible. Let's not forget there was a time most of Uganda was armed. Let's not forget there was a time most of Uganda was dealing with the issues Karamoja is dealing with. You understand? Yeah. But like he said, the Western tribes have grown into civilization of knowing my cattle are my cattle, his cattle are his cattle. And Karamoja did not have that chance. And for me, it's not that I'm pointing fingers, but this aspect of having someone else represent you does not give you the freedom to explore your development and to explore how well you can sensitize your communities, how well, because for all these years, we have treated Karamoja as a charity case. And yet it's part of us. So I believe the fact that we had that mentality of we shall not wait for Karamoja to develop. We left them so many decades behind. And right now we are putting them on so much pressure to be at the same level with us. But we have had so many years of education, so many years of investment. And I believe that's why we are where we are today, because of we had the chance and they did not have the chance.
Yeah.
And also, I think I said that. I think if we give them the time to invest in them and sensitize them, because also giving them relief items alone, for me, does not build what we are aiming at. I believe putting people down there, telling them about the experience and the dangers and how, and selling to them the future they should expect if this is done, and sensitizing them, that is what we need. Because if you give them information, that means they know and they have a picture of what they dream of, which Karamoja doesn't have. Every time we are thinking about them, we are thinking about them of taking goats to them, of taking food to them, of taking things like that. Iron sheets to them. And let's keep in mind that the evidence of us sending goats that are even the wrong breed shows they were not consulted on what is needed in their communities. So basically we have alienated them from their own development. For me, which I believe is not an act of development. We have, and until we bring them to the table and ask and listen to them while we give them information, we listen to them. That way we shall have a tailor-made development. And for me, that is justice. Where everyone is involved, they know what works for them, they have given you ideas, and you have also given them your ideas and intermarried the information to make it safe for them and their communities.
Yes. Wow, thank you very much. Presta, Tororo cement is made out of limestone. Limestone in Uganda is found in Karamoja. We have heard that Uganda has some segments of gold. And the location for that gold is, in fact, Karamoja sub-region. I don't know, with all these natural resources, the region appears to be so endowed, But if you look at the poverty report last year, released by the Ministry of Finance, Karamoja almost topped the list, in terms of poverty. So help us understand the correlation between a region having all that resources, but at the same time being so poor. Where is the correlation between that?
All right, thank you. So regarding minerals and mining, according to the Constitution, all minerals belong to the government.
That's true.
So there was limestone in Karamoja being mined by Tororo Cement. I think as of now, the limestone was depleted. It's now being mined from Kapchora and the Elgon region. So speaking of gold, last year the government passed the Minerals and Mining Act of 2022 to legislate on mostly that newly discovered gold. But on the premise that the government owns all minerals, regardless of where they are found, like that premise alone is the beginning of alienation of the inhabitants of that land or area where those minerals are found. Because reports by Human Rights Watch say that the gold prospectors and miners have been to Karamoja region. Land in Karamoja is mostly communally owned. Not one person owns the land in Karamoja. Many people own it. So if that land is going to be sold, everybody who is inhabiting that land or benefiting from it, maybe through cattle, or maybe growing some crops, or even just living there, needs to be consulted. And that, should I say, the elder in that cluster will speak on behalf of those people. So as a person here said, we do not understand the intricacies of that region. So regarding gold mining, the gold mining companies have gone into Karamoja, not knowing about their culture, customs, their norms of land ownership and all of that. So they are buying this land not from the communal owners, but from the political leaders. In that, the act which was passed last year caters for the remuneration of land on which gold has been discovered. But the people on whose land the gold is being mined have not benefited from any of that. So there's that divide. Also, we have talked a lot about the internal issues being a cause of, of this Karamoja question and all of that. But personally, I think that the government itself has contributed a lot to the Karamoja question. Because, we talked about cattle raiding and cattle rustling last year in the famine that killed the 900 people and had more than 100,000 of them starving. The major causes were famine, cattle rustling, and the third was the presence of the UPDF in that region. For the past 20 years, the UPDF has been, deployed in the Karamoja region, and there have actually been several human rights violations in that region. They give reports that, we have actually left the region. Then 2 years later, you hear that more people are being killed, there are clashes with the UPDF and all of that. And all of these questions and all of these issues contribute to the underdevelopment of the Karamoja region.
Wow, very interesting. I want to explore something, but with Nancy.
Yeah.
Nancy, the aspect of insecurity, and like Presta has ably put it, is that the UPDF has found itself present in the region for such a long period of time.
Yeah.
Part of the core values of the NRM government is that, they believe in the Pan-African views and values. And to that extent, as a country, we have been able to export security to, for example, Somalia. You look at DRC Congo, you look at South Sudan. The UPDF is present there and is doing a good job in terms of pacification.
Yeah.
I don't know, how is the same UPDF that is pacifying, Mogadishu, is failing to pacify just a small sub-region within the country.
Yeah.
I don't know how that is possible. So the aspect of insecurity, what are the underlying factors?
This is, I mean, let me just read you something small from one of the groups of the Peer and Development Forum.
Yeah.
I think it was something about the current situation and how the UPDF is actually involved. The person like, the Karamoja insecurity just keeps getting worse. Nowadays, here there are guns everywhere and all the time, right? Even in the middle of the day, even like centers. The Pokot have derived another strategy to raid. They come with the army in the name of recovering their cows and forcefully raid cows. You can imagine they be having guns with the soldiers, right? And then, now the worst bit of it is that they've started ambushing cars, motorcycles, undressing people, and shooting at cars. Just here in one of the villages, it's called Nahoit, they have so far beaten like 3 marble trucks. The marble trucks that you were saying, there is still lime. They're still transporting the lime. This was just yesterday. And one of the boys, one of the 10 boys of one of the trucks is actually missing and is said to have been killed. So this is what happens with the army. There's been like words on the street anyway that the army is also involved in the current insecurity, like the cattle rustling. So what happens is that they alliance with the business people. So because they have the guns, they help them to go and raid, then they sell to them. Do you get what I mean? They raid the cows with the warriors, then they sell to the businessmen. So it's like a business right now. You get? So that makes it very hard to say we can count on the army for security. You get? Because they are also involved somehow in this. So I think for Karamoja, the army has become more of a liability, like over time. Because everyone knows that we cannot count on the army right now. Because now they're also working with it's like now a chain. They work with the warriors at the grassroots, then they work with the business. Because
Nancy, at some point there were allegations that it was the LDU that were perpetrating this insecurity.
Yes.
Then we had the LDU removed, and still the same issues continue to happen.
Exactly. That's what I was just saying. Now this is just yesterday, because now it's purely the UPDF that not the LDUs.
Yeah, they were phased out.
Yeah, they were phased out. So like this is what happens right now. It's like a business thing right now that is going on. They alliance with the warriors and they take advantage of the fact that now we do not have food. You get that the grassroots people don't have food because the climate has not been favorable. So last year, following that famine, the one that killed about 900 people, until now, people are still dying of hunger. So people are devising other means of survival. So if the army is telling you, okay, you go and raid for me cows, I give you the gun, then I'll give you some money, which will take you some time. And then for him, or the soldier, or the group of soldiers also sell to the business people who bring it then this side, outside Karamoja, and they also sell, right? Then others also, and then also the other thing is that our neighbors are not disarmed. The Turkana, for example, are not disarmed. And the Pokot on the other side of Kenya are not also disarmed. And our borders are porous. So you can like walk into Kenya anytime and come in. You can go get a gun, buy a gun, bring it into Uganda, do your thing and sell it and take it back to what? And take it back to Kenya. So it's like we need a really, I don't know, we need like a team, especially in this in the case of disarmament, we need to sit down and re-strategize everything, because all the UPDF was supposed to come and protect, but now, and also I would not blame the UPDF really, because their welfare is also not catered for. Like if you see where they're staying in Karamoja, they're staying like in some small, they have families, and then they're not paid as much, so they're devising means of improving themselves, their livelihood. And how can they do it in a region like Karamoja? Cattle rustling. Because they know that it's a thing, it happens all the time, it's normal. So how can they benefit from it? You get? And they disarm the people. So how can they arm them to go back and raid the cows? So for Karamojans really right now, like initially, well, cattle rustling was meant to when you have a lot of cattle in Karamoja, you earn the respect. You're considered very wealthy. You can marry as many women as you want. Like, who would not want that? So initially, that was the reason as why many Karamojans would go and raid cows, so that you can amass wealth and get the respect, get as many women. You can even become like an elder. You can be initiated, even if you're young, but you have so many cows. There's like an initiation ceremony. You can be initiated to become an elder because you have all the cows that you want. You can have as many women as you want. That was initially, right? But right now,
just to ask something there,
yes.
Just to interrogate, is that the practice of labeling cows, does it apply equally in Karamoja? That if I'm Kidega Moses, I label my cows Kidega. So that, I mean, even if you stole them, you cannot exactly be proud because someone would know that, no, these cows don't belong to you actually. So I don't know, how do you identify that these cows belong to me? Just to understand that.
Yes, they used to label them. But, you can still go and, because, I mean, when you label a cow, you create like a wound on the cow. Yeah. So you can still alter and, change it. So it doesn't really help.
It's a bit tricky.
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky. So it's not about, right now, it's not about the wealth. It's just about, because also, over time, the number of cows in Karamoja have actually reduced. The famine also killed so many of them, and there are these diseases that always come and go. So there are not so many. So what they have decided to do is they've also reached into the neighboring regions, like Teso, for example. Some even go up to Bugesu to look for cows. So like it's no longer about amassing wealth and getting respect. It's just about survival.
Yeah.
It's about having and now they've gone beyond just stealing cattle. They steal anything. Chicken, like ducks, turkey, if you have like any of those at home, now it's like a liability. Yeah.
And I agree with you, because the one thing I know about survival is that when man is put on the aspect where their survival is compromised, I know they can do so many things to try and find a meal on that table. But I appreciate that. Peterson, listening to Nancy and partly Presta, is that you get to appreciate that the UPDF that we are allegedly perceiving as a liability to the region appears to also be a victim of maybe a grappling state, or maybe aspects of corruption, because their welfare is not well catered for, then they're also trying to survive. They're human beings at the end of the day. So, but also the political question attached to it. Do you think that the issue of the security in Karamoja has been politicized? That whereas it is an aspect of security and an aspect of human life and safety, there's no politics involved in it.
Well, thank you. I want to differ somehow from what you said. Yeah. I believe if it is true UPDF has not been fully facilitated in Karamoja. However, I believe their presence has somehow tried to reduce the conflicts that are in the region compared to before. At least there has been some. The conflicts have somehow reduced compared to the previous days when LDU and the other means were being used. So, to me, like she said, these neighboring countries, the people from Kenya and Northern and South Sudan, those people are equipped. They have weapons. So the fact that when you come in Uganda and UPDF is trying to disarm Ugandans, the Karamojans, so it still leaves them helpless because they still have to fight these people that are equipped. So even if UPDF does its best, but when these borders are still porous, like you said, we are doing nothing, because still the Kenyans will still come in to do the cattle raiding like they have been doing. And that because the Ugandans are not equipped anymore, you find them helpless, and automatically the conflicts will still raise. So
and I thought that is where the East African community comes in, because what I imagine is that the EAC is being established partly to deal with the aspects of insecurity within the region. I thought that's where now we would have concerted efforts from, you know, the Kenyan government, the government here, to agree that how can we, you know, deal with this issue. So do you think that there is not so much coordination between the two governments to address aspects of disarmament in that particular area?
yeah, currently there is no agreement between the different countries of East African community to curb that situation. Because if you're to see, Uganda is now sending security to other countries, Somalia, DRC, but it has not done so much to northern Uganda. So to me, I think there is a lot that has to be done, maybe by the East African community, if it really exists. If it really exists, but I don't think it is surely active. It is just there theoretically, but practically it is not actually functioning. Because these are minor issues. Maybe if we could bring these people, because they know this is an East African community, we are one, we are all East Africans, then why do we have to keep fighting each other? So I believe if as East African community we come up together and maybe we harmonize and be on ground and tell these people that we are one, look, we can sit and solve this, then something can be done.
Is there an aspect of politics that is, you know, frustrating the aspect of pacification of Karamoja? Because we have seen the UPDF on several occasions parade guns that they've purportedly disarmed from the local people. But, you know, we still hear cases where the same guns are in possession of these cattle raiders. So I don't know, is the UPDF not doing enough? Or it is just a matter of, you know, politics, and I don't know.
Like I've said, these other neighboring countries, we have South Sudan, which is a worn-out country. It is in war. People are in war every time. So when these Ugandans are disarmed, and the fact that their neighbors are armed, they still have to look for other means of getting armed. So they will go to South Sudan. Some of them actually travel maybe to Somalia to get weapons, so that they can defend themselves anytime these neighboring countries attack them. So to me, I think, of course, UPDF has not done enough. It has not done enough. That one I cannot defend them. But it has somehow done, which we have to appreciate. It has done something, though it has not fully executed what it's supposed to do. But the fact that we have neighboring countries, and like she said, the boundaries are porous. Anytime someone can travel out and come in. So in South Sudan, most people in South Sudan are equipped. They have weapons. So someone doesn't take someone a lot of time to leave Uganda, go to South Sudan, get a gun, and come back to Uganda. So it all comes back to the East African community, like we had said. So because when Uganda disarms, still there is another source of weapons. So it critically makes no sense when we disarm and still
it becomes a vicious cycle of the sort.
Exactly.
Yes, Nancy, you have a point.
Yes, I do. We actually do have we have a sort of an agreement. It's not really an agreement, but there's an organization that is called IGAD, Intergovernmental Authority, something for development. On development, sorry. It's in East Africa. So the central strategic role of IGAD is to promote regional cooperation and integration among the member states, and with the aim of improving the welfare of all citizens. And Uganda is part of IGAD, Kenya is part, South Sudan, and all the East African countries are part. And also, IGAD has really worked on cross-border issues, especially security in Karamoja. It has worked with the Turkana in Kenya. It has worked with South Sudan also. And last year, they actually had a huge campaign. It was in Turkana, where they had all the political leaders across the member states. They met in Kenya. After that phase of insecurity again, that was there last year, and then the famine. So we have, it's really active. It's doing its best, but also I feel like they failed to agree on whether they should all disarm all the pastoralists, the pastoral tribes in the different regions, because the Turkana are not disarmed, even though those even in Ethiopia, because they still go up to Ethiopia. So I think the body is active, but I think they need to sort of amend some of their agreements with the different countries.
Yeah, I agree with you, but just my comment is that, you know, and like he said, most of these bodies are a matter of form and not substance. That by form, they look very beautiful. On paper, wow, IGAD is doing all these things. You know, EAC on paper looks spectacular. But it must be a people-driven initiative. I think that for the longer we spend these conversations and these plannings in the boardrooms are not making them people-centered, and you know, the people must be more involved in this process of peace building. It can't be a top-bottom approach. It must be a bottom-up approach. And to me, that is really what I think. But just to move on to the aspect of famine, because I think you did mention it, is that, Hamirah, you're a climate change activist, for example. And, you know, Uganda is known to have, or Africa at large is known to have, a good number of this continent is arable land. I don't know how we find ourselves in this day and era with all this arable land. Uganda has for so long. I grew up knowing that Uganda's, the backbone of our economy is agriculture. That's what we are told, you know, growing up in AST. I don't know, with agriculture, part of the reasons for the creation of the EAC is to find market for our agricultural produce. So, I mean, by the time we are looking for market outside, it means there is surplus domestically. I don't know, how can we have surplus, yet our own are dying of famine and no food? I don't know, where's the correlation?
So, to answer your question, I think it's Peterson who said these things are really actually easy. The leaders or the people responsible are just making them seem very hard. For example, Western Uganda alone has food that can feed the whole of Uganda, just the Western Uganda region. Like, it can feed the whole of Uganda and it will still have surplus to export. But there's so much politics being played. There's so much unbalanced information. There's even development, logistics on how to, like, I don't know why we even have like high prices for transport, because carrying produce from Western Uganda to Karamoja is too expensive, and it shouldn't be like that. Like, these things are not so. Back to my point where I said communication with communities. If the government or the political leaders or the leaders knew Karamoja needs food, and they knew Karamoja has cattle, and they have gold, and they have all these minerals coming from where they're coming from, and we concentrate on developing that. But while we're doing that, we're also feeding them with the food that is coming from the side. Our government has enough money. We're even stealing some of it, like politicians are stealing some of these things, taking them to their houses. They have enough money to be like, okay, every month we shall have this ton of food being ferried to Karamoja, and in return we shall have the gold and the minerals coming from there. But these are things they are not considering, because I think we're also a bit so selfish, because much as we say for God and my country, we have turned it for God and my stomach, for God and my family, for God and my children. And we are living in that selfish circle. In return, we have so many people suffering. Back to the East African community, the same thing is happening. Probably the Kenyans feel like disarming our people will, probably they're stealing more cows from all these countries, and it makes Kenya look like it's richer. You understand? And in return, they're making destabilizing all this security in these communities around them. And I think we have that inhumane spirit, and that is why we are stuck with crises like this. Because even before we look at the global north and the climate finance and all those things they're supposed to do on their behalf. Internally, if we paid attention and decided that we're actually going to use action and actually do these things and not make them seem like they're so hard, that because politicians and leaders have sold to us this idea that just like getting something good is so hard to actually get, and we have to have UPDF, we have to have all these things, and yet if we had communities communicating and understanding of governments, like we say in the East African community, most of these problems we are having will actually be solved. Because the famine, yes, Karamoja has issues with the weather and growing crops, but also Karamoja has actually green places.
Green belts.
Yes, it has green belts.
Yeah.
You understand? And if we, what's the word? If we exploited them wisely, some of these problems wouldn't be our problems. But we have left ourselves in a place where we keep saying that is too hard to be done, and yet it's not. And that is the analogy they are selling to us. And to buy disappointment, we're actually buying it. You understand?
Wow, very complex issues right there. Presta, if you look at the voting pattern of the Karamoja region, is that for the past, I think, 4 general elections, Karamoja votes largely for the NRM. Amidst all these challenges that they're having, you know, constant drought, constant insecurity, election in, election out, they continue to entrust the NRM with the mandate. At least, well, according to at least the official, you know, EC results, you know, is that we see that Karamoja votes for the NRM largely. I don't know, what does this speak to the aspect of the citizenry, the body politic of the people of Karamoja? I thought that with all these challenges, there would be much more discontent, and there would be much more urge and much more pressure. There would be much more civic engagement to ensure that, you know, government is held accountable. And, you know, should government not respond, then it would lead to them being, you know, voted out. But the contrary is happening. So how do you explain this?
I think Karamoja's voting patterns are like that parable of the tree and the axe. You know, the axe cuts down the tree, and the tree thought that the axe was, you know, it's brethren, like, you came from me, why are you destroying me? It's something similar. I'm going to talk about something you talked about the famine in Karamoja. I remember last year when all those images of starving children, of parents burying their children were circulating on social media. It took like 2 months for the government to decide to send food and relief items to the Karamoja region. Then, unfortunately, as they were sending those items, floods struck in the Mbale region. And the Prime Minister's office was like, you know what? That food we're sending to Karamoja, first send it to Mbale, then, you know, we shall work out what we want from that region. So it is general apathy, you know, not apathy from the government. But back to those voting patterns, I think it's a question of divide and rule. You know, things like citizen engagement, civil rights. We talk about these issues because we have been enlightened, we have gone to school, we have had access to, you know, what I would say are foreign ideologies. But Karamoja is the poorest region in the country, it is the least educated, and all of that. So while on the outside we might be like, why can't they see better? Like, why are they choosing to side with what you would call the oppressor? But I think for them on their side, they don't think it's the oppressor. Like, they do not have that in their minds.
Or is it because of what Nancy said, that part of these issues are internal? It is within them.
Yes.
And therefore, it's pointless to point a finger at someone else because, like Nancy said, even among themselves, they don't see themselves as one. And yes, Hamirah.
For me, in that case, I would think no, I would say no to that.
Yeah.
Because I think in the earlier days, I remember I was younger, but in the earlier days, the NRM sold salvation to these communities. And frankly speaking, opposition parties have not done a very good job in the Karamoja region. It's like something we call the foreign policy.
Yeah.
Like, for their Karamoja policy has been so poor. Because I remember for the first two elections, no political leader actually went to Karamoja to address or talk to them or even listen to them. And then the NRM had the first lady there. You understand? And she was the Karamoja minister for a long while.
Yeah.
She, even the small pain relief, you know, when you're having like pain, and paracetamol, I think, is the least pain reliever. And they even something as small as paracetamol looks like salvation to you. And they're like, these guys knew us when you get what I'm trying to say. So for me, I don't think it's all that. It's basically the part where you put the straw, the divide and rule she talks about, where you act like you're actually helping, but you're actually taking. But because people have been so drained and have been in so much pain, the paracetamol you're giving them looks like it's actually goffin, yet it's actually not. So for all those many years, they have only known NRM, and you cannot blame them on how they have voted. Although, as who are on the outside, you know, they keep saying, you who is on the inside, when you are going through something, it's only the people who are outside that are seeing you bleeding, and you never notice that you're actually bleeding. Just like, this is actually not that bad. And that is what is happening with Karamoja right now. For them, they don't feel like they're bleeding. Oh, I think now they have noticed they're now bleeding. Like, but initially they'll be like, at least we're relieved. It's not as bad as it was those days.
Yeah, maybe I can just supplement. So I think for me, in Karamoja, for the past regions, I think we had the Obote, we had the Amin, and there was war in the region, and we had people like displaced, moving up and about. I've talked to a few elders, and when they tell you what happened back then, they're like, would rather have this than like go back to that to that whole situation of Amin and Obote running up and down, moving with children. And so like they haven't healed from what happened in the past, right? And like she said, like what NRM has done has given them that paracetamol, like that it has given them some bit of stability.
An area of hope.
Something like that. It's like they see NRM as that person that came and rescued them. And like they want to hold on to that. They would not want to again go back to that kind of, you know, hopelessness that they were in before. So they will tell you, if you're going to vote, go and vote for the bus.
So meaning the NRM support in Karamoja is justifiable. Is that your point?
No, I can say they have done something, right? Even though they have not done enough. For me, I can see they have not done enough. They've not even done the lists that they can do. But like for them, for those that are uneducated, they see that what NRM has done is more than enough.
It's more than enough.
You get.
So it's a bit relative, right?
Exactly.
Yes, Hamirah.
I think the NRM support that you're talking about is more of what, when you speak to the elders, like the elders that were there during the war, the Amin's war, the Obote's war. I think the Karamoja and our elders also have not had the capacity to dream of something better. Understand? And the only things they see is now and then. And they don't see what happens after here. You understand? And the fact that that is what is playing in their heads. They're like, this man can actually, or these people can actually take us back there. They have the power to take us back there. So we should, it's basically they're living in a state of fear. Like, we actually have to give them what they want to still keep what they have given us. But we don't see a place where these people actually give us the future without us going back to where? You understand what I'm going to tell you?
I'm trying to understand,
that fear that most of the elders, even in Uganda, even in these other parts of Uganda, those are the fears when you talk to your grandparents, to your parents. Those are the things they tell you, like, we know where we are, we know where we came from, but we are so sure, or we have been assured at least that we will not get to where you the young people want us to go without us first going back to where we were. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the point has been made.
Yeah.
To add on,
we are due for a short break. Peterson.
Yeah, to add on what she said, she had said before, that people in Karamoja, they are still living an ancient way of life. So they are still somehow not yet up to the current era. So because of that,
Not really like that.
They're actually not like that.
Not like that.
No, somehow. Because like she had said, education-wise, they're still lacking, and they are not yet up to date, like according to other parts of the country. I want us to agree on that.
Yeah, statistically speaking.
Yes.
Majority.
So in the ancient time, usually people used to tell stories. Yeah, you know, your parents tell you this and this and this, and most of those people do not have an immediate source of information to get more updated. They are living in this life of your stories. You are gathered around a fireplace, you jazz, they tell you this and this. So their parents keep telling them how they have come up with NRM, how NRM saved them from the Armenian wars and the wars that happened before. So because of that, these people grow up knowing NRM is a good thing. NRM is a good thing. So anytime NRM comes to campaign, it is always assured.
Okay. I think we shall pick it up from there, Nancy, after the break.
Yeah.
But I think we all agree here that we all want the best for Karamoja.
Yeah. That's true.
But also, we must be able to dare to imagine a better future.
Yes.
Not just for Karamoja, but I think for Uganda and Africa at large. We must dare to think of a bigger and a better future. Not be comfortable with where we are right now. Well, we are due for a short commercial break. To the viewers, thank you for making a date with us. Don't leave, because I'll be shortly back after this.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
We'll be back from that short commercial break. Yes, Nancy, you had a point to make before the break was interrupted. I mean, the issue was around how the NRM continues to enjoy majority support in Karamoja. And our concern was that, shouldn't Karamoja in fact have better, given what their voting pattern has been? I mean, don't they deserve not to be the ones finding themselves with all this famine and all these insecurities? Like, don't they deserve better? But also the political question and how they've been voting. Is it by coincidence? Is it by design? Is it, how do you define that?
Thank you. And I think when we went for the break, I just might have continued when I was discussing with her. But like it's not by coincidence. Of course, we deserve better. Of course, Karamoja deserves what Uganda has, what Northern Uganda has, what Western Uganda has, right? But that's not the case. And it has everything to do with what Peterson might have mentioned about the education statistics also. Majority of the Karamojans have not fully demanded for what they deserve as Karamojongs, right? And also as of why Karamojongs have been voting the way they have been voting, like I said, and like just to add on what she said earlier, that it's no longer about, they don't look at NRM as the hope that they got, right? It's now about fear, and which has been instilled in them, that if you do not vote for us, we will take you back to, you know, the days of Amin, the days of, you know, Bote, of running up and about, you know, living in, you know, camps and, you know, running around. So it's not just by coincidence that they're voting the way they are. Of course, they would want to vote better, but also it's also...
Okay, can you say that these are allegations?
Yeah.
But not exactly proven, that the NRM campaigns in sort of, you know, fear-mongering, but rather, I mean, it's alleged that, you know...
Of course, these are all
partly,
allegations, yeah. And these are, of course, words on the street. And that's what usually... that's what I've seen anyway. And yeah, so it's not by coincidence that they vote the way they vote, and it's not right that they vote that way, but they don't get what they deserve. I believe that the NRM should do better, and it has the resources to actually do better. Yeah. And the fact that
they have our resources, they have our taxes, they have, I mean, what the NRM is using to run this country is our money.
Yes.
As citizens of this country.
Yes.
It is our taxes. It is, if it is borrowed money, it is us who are going to pay it. So it isn't NRM money.
Yes.
It is money for Ugandans.
The money, yeah, exactly. So Karamojongs also deserve to get the same share, you know, from their own money. Because I believe that the Karamojongs also do pay taxes, right? That's right. Yeah. So I believe that NRM should do better, and also should do a lot more for Karamoja, given its status right now. You cannot say you're going to give the same amount of money to Western Uganda and give the same amount to Karamoja, right? They're all in different states, or statuses as regions. So I think, of course, that needs to be addressed, and
that's why I want to pick it from to bring in Peterson. Peterson, government affirmative action responses. You know, we have seen the relief items. You may recall the goats. I think there's some part of maize as well, and also the iron sheets and all these things. I don't know. How does a minister who is already very privileged, who is already having all these things, doesn't see the need that, you know, these goats and this maize, these iron sheets should reach the beneficiaries given their status? I don't know. What kind of country is this where ministers act the way they did?
If you're to look at all the ministers of Karamoja, well, all people that have been ministers of Karamoja, they're not actually from Karamoja.
There is one who was a Karamojong, I think Lokoris.
It's only one person.
Yeah, Lokeris. Oh, sorry.
He was the first.
He was the first person. Yeah. So I think the main reason as to why this ministry was created has not been effective. Because when you find a minister is from a different region, these are people who are not equipped with the knowledge of the region. They don't know the challenges affecting the people. And mainly, these ministers, they come, get what is supposed to cater for Karamoja, they take it to their region, so that the next time they can have campaigning grounds, if you're to realize that. And it has been done several times. Previously, when Janet was a minister for Karamoja, the following term she went to Rahama, she contested. It is the same story. The current minister, she's from Manafa. So literally, I believe the ministry is not doing what it is supposed to do. These people are just using the ministry to benefit their home areas and their constituencies. Yes, because most of these ministers are from different constituencies, not from Karamoja region. So I believe maybe that needs to be revised. Maybe if we could consider appointing ministers who are from such regions, maybe they could develop their own areas other than these other people from other constituencies who are taking back what belongs to Karamoja and being diverted to these other regions. Yes. And about this relief, I personally believe the blame is all to the office of the Prime Minister. Because there's no way you say something goes to Karamoja and you're calling the Finance Minister who is from Chivale, in Hamirah region. So literally, me, I believe the loophole is in the office of the Prime Minister. Yeah.
Peace. I don't know, all these conflicts, shouldn't actually the DPP swing in action? Because, you know, these are aspects of corruption, which is, you know, in fact, a criminal offense under the Penal Code Act.
Yes.
Shouldn't the DPP actually be pressing or preferring charges against these ministers for abuse of office and misuse of you know, public resources? I don't know. What should have been the legal implication of such actions?
To begin with, Honorable Chitutu, the Minister of Karamoja, who is alleged to have stolen those iron sheets. She was supposed to appear. She was summoned by court. She did not appear. The implications of that is she believes she is either too big for the court or is bigger, you know, than the entire judiciary and is a power unto her own self. I was browsing Daily Monitor, I think yesterday. I saw a cartoon. It was about the IGG's office and investigating the sources of wealth for police officers and military officials. And the president told the IGG that in cases of the military and the police, please not investigate where their money came from. Okay. Let them be. So I think Kidega said that the resources are not for NRM, they are for Uganda. But I think we're in a kind of twisted situation where it seems like the resources are not really for the Ugandans and they might actually be for NRM because corruption has captured the state. Last year, the Kasese flood victims, they meant to take for them iron shelter, bed sheets, and all of that. Some ministry of the office of the Prime Minister, they took shoddy items and were died, you know, in those poor conditions and all of that. COVID-19, we saw all the issues in procurement. Like, if we were to name all the corruption scandals in this country, I don't think we would end. Like, every other day, there's a corruption scandal that one might happen, and you might not even know because it is an ordinary occurrence. Yes, we have the Penal Code Act, we have the Anti-Corruption Act, so many amendments to put in the definition of corruption and all of that. But in the end, all these policies are not going to work if we summon a minister to court and they refuse to come.
Basically, we have made a mockery out of the ruling, out of the judiciary, out of the parliament itself, out of every organization and body that is supposed to hold Ugandans and leaders accountable. Because I think there are incidences where even the president has called us, like, you leave that one alone. There are incidences where people have just refused to come to court.
And they're not held accountable.
And they're not held accountable. People have been summoned to the parliament,
the committees,
the committees, and they have refused to come. So we
Couldn't that amount contempt of court?
There's this meme
if
that
they
keeps
refuse
going
to
on.
come, what are you going to do to them?
Also, there's this meme that keeps on going around, and they're like, I think someone should have a vacation out of this country because who rules this country? And when she was listing all these incidences, I'm like, I felt like my heart was pierced because usually we see all these things and these guys actually, even that, because I think there's a fee for when you miss court, and these guys have stolen enough money to even pay that off. And even when they are probably remanded to prison, they never stay there that long. So basically, we have made this country as a place where there's no repercussions for your wrongdoings, especially if you have power or you know people in power. People have gotten away with so many things, and it only leaves us heartbroken because how many people died when that food did not get to Karamoja? How many lives were lost when the relief items that were supposed to go to Kasese did not get there, or they got there in poor condition? How many lives were lost when all this corruption keeps happening? How many lives are distorted? How many livelihoods are destroyed? How many futures, children who are supposed to probably look forward to this help, how many futures have been dug a grave for? You understand? And let's not be lied to. The more we have people that are not educated, not healthy, not catered for, wherever we expect our economy to head, we are not going. You understand? Because we're going to still have a staggering economy. We're going to still have so many crime rates because people have to steal to survive. She keeps on telling you now people are raiding cattle for survival. You understand? And this is what we have made this country out to be. Like, we've made it to be like there's no repercussion for your wrongdoing. You can do it and easily get away with it. Even social media can speak and you'll still get away with it. There will even be evidence against you and you'll still get away with this. And this is heartbreaking for us, the youth of this country.
It is.
Because what are we going to inherit?
I agree. There's an issue regarding the independence, the strength of these institutions, but also how effective they are. Nancy, if you read Matthew Lukachire's book, he wrote a book, okay, you'd call it an autobiography, entitled 70 Years a Witness. Matthew Lukachire was the Minister of Privatization. When the deal to privatize Uganda Commercial Bank went sour, Parliament was baying for his blood. I mean, Parliament was coming for his censure, and he chose to resign. You know, and today we have ministers who, even if they are censured, they still insist that I will not leave office. You have ministers who, whatever amount of immoral act they ever do, they still have the guts to, continue to hold office. Now you compare them with the Matthew Lukachires, who voluntarily said, you know what, here, I should have done better as a minister. I should have performed a much more stringent oversight role. And I failed my people, and I don't deserve to be their leader. I don't deserve to hold this office. What has happened to our leaders over time? Because you compare it to the Karamoja issue, someone saying that and she just found themselves in my compound and all these things. I don't know, it's a bit appalling.
Yes, it is.
I don't know. Speak about the moral ethics of our leaders today.
I think it's really absurd. I'm short of words, because how can we have a minister who has been summoned to court not showing up and nothing is done, right? How can we have the head of state telling the IGG to not do their work for specific people, right? So I think we have a very big problem. We do not know, like she said, who is ruling this country. Like, who says, like, are we actually textbook ruling this country, or we are, customizing the way we are ruling this country? Because I feel like if we are to constitutionally rule this country, we would not be having most of these things. So that means the ministers would be doing their work, right? The president would be doing his work of, letting the IGG do their work, and then we would not be having prime ministers, for example, who are stealing relief items for a region that is really doing so badly, that is facing death, right? So I think we have a very big problem in terms of actually implementing our policies, right? And I do not know how we're going to go about it. And as the youth, like she said, we do not know what we are inheriting. Like, who are we looking up to? How are the leaders? If today you wanted to be the president of this country, who would you look up to? Right? Who would you look up to? Whose rules would you follow? Would you look at how the president is currently, or how the ministers are currently behaving? So it's really, really absurd, and I don't know how we're going to go about it, but we need to do something as the youth, because we are the future.
That's right.
Yeah.
Presta, my last question regarding Karamoja is that the aspect of mindset. I believe that charity begins at home, and if we are to address the issue of Karamoja, the people within the region must take, a center role in this. They must, hold the steering wheel and drive this vehicle. So do you think that the Karamoja, their mindset has also for so long played a role in finding themselves where they are today, that they believe that they are pastorists and only that they are not open to maybe agriculture or other things or other economic ventures? Or is that limitation hinged on the climatic conditions? So I don't know, that sort of mindset change. And should they be able to, reform the way they perceive economics and things like that?
Okay, I think one of us used the term ancient to describe the Karamoja sub-region. And I think the use of that term in itself is discriminatory. Like, we are othering them, saying they're not like us. They're stuck in the past, and we're in the present. But I want to look at the issue from a human rights perspective. Karamojans are people, like all the other Ugandans. And the more we've spoken about the Karamoja question, just hearing abuse of rights, the lack of access to shelter, to food, to clean water, to health, education, work, development, and all of that. All those are human rights violations. Then, you add on the issue of corruption and all of that, because human rights in themselves are inalienable. They are fundamental. Ugandans, the Karamojans inclusive, are entitled to those human rights. And in this case, it is especially the economic, social, and cultural rights that they are being eroded, because it's the poorest sub-region, the most underdeveloped, and all of that. Karamoja might have all these internal issues, but that is not an excuse for the underdevelopment of the region. The social contract theory, like, it puts that role on the government, that the government has the obligation and the duty to develop all regions of the country equitably. I think it is in Objective 7 of our Constitution, whereby the government is empowered with the authority to guarantee, the social rights, economic rights, and all of that. And in that regard, the government has grossly failed in regard to Karamoja. So I don't think mindset change is going to come from Karamoja. As long as Karamoja is treated as, a side thing, an impoverished region within a region, as long as we continue saying we shall not wait for Karamoja to develop and, all those discriminatory slogans and whatnot, we shall not see any change happening. And I don't think that there is necessarily anything wrong with being nomads. As I said earlier, Karamoja has its problems, yes, but the government has contributed a lot more to those problems. For example, the Karamojong, in their cattle, they get nourishment from the skin, from the hooves, from the blood, and like they don't necessarily even need to eat crops to get sustenance. They get the blood from the cows. I think they can collect blood weekly or something like that without killing the cow and all of that. But with the cattle rustling, the UPDF, as she said, the UPDF is also involved in this illegal cattle trade. They are left without, their ancestral ways of life, and they are forced to adapt into what we would call a modern way of life. That is not exactly suited for them, and that has not been given to them equitably. I can also say that Karamoja.
Okay, but I get the point that, we must appreciate and respect that these are people of an inherent way of life that has been tailored in a certain way. But also my point is that they must have alternatives. That, okay, tomorrow if pastoralism fails, then what next? That's why it is important for them to have as many options as possible. They can be pastoralists, yes, but also agriculture and things like that. But guys, we must wrap this up.
I know.
So
Can I get something
let's just
more?
get our recommendations in just 1 minute each regarding Karamoja, then we move towards the next. Yes, I'll begin with you as I move towards peace. In 1 minute each, please.
What you've said makes sense, but for me, from where I stand as a humanitarian point of view and as an advocate for justified economic development and social development of our community, is we are rushing Karamojans, because let's not forget that Western Uganda wasn't actually really farming in the beginning. It was also like fully cattle keepers, but they had to grow into actually exploiting other resources and other.
Just a question. Were they nomads as well? Or they were just
The pastor.
They are
pastoralists.
Yes.
Because Karamojangs are both.
Yes, but my point is, if I have a feeling, I have this deep feeling within me, is if we let the Karamojangs grow into this development and like stood around as guiding lights and not be like, we are here to make you do this, we expect this from you.
Yeah.
Because I think we're putting them under so much pressure, and there is this whole survival mode. And trust me, like someone once said, you can never advise a hungry person, because all they're thinking about is their hungry stomach. So what Karamoja right now is dealing with is the necessity and the need they're going through.
Yeah.
And we are trying to demand development from them at a point where they're actually not ready for it. They are still very hungry. You've not fed them, so they cannot listen to you logically on what you're saying. But that being said and done, for me, I go back to my point of sensitizing the communities, letting Karamoja develop with their information and with the rest of the world as guiding lights, to be like, that's good, you should improve here, you should, because they know what is affecting them and they know how they can come out of it. And while we do that, we should remember that we should aim at justice, and to get justice, there has to be equality, and there has to be equity.
Yeah.
That means we have to make sure that if some parts of Uganda that are already where Karamoja wants to be are getting some resources, we should probably add some of those resources to Karamoja, like more schools, more help for children, more education, more all these things. When relief comes, it's supposed to be enough to get to Karamoja. And even the people that we put in power and expect to lead the changes in Karamoja must be given full information, full education, full help, full everything they need, like sensitization and information and resources they must access for them to better plan for a community they grew up in, for a community they love, in a way that will benefit that community. Basically, tailor-made action.
Solutions. Thank you. Yes, Peterson, your last words regarding Karamoja.
My recommendation, the East African community should come up, and these neighboring countries, Kenya, South Sudan, and maybe Uganda, they should sit and agree. If it is disarming, let's all disarm.
Yes.
Not only Uganda disarming, then the Kenyans take advantage of the disarmed Ugandans to raid their cattle. And then two, I would advise that the government of Uganda should come up with long-term solutions other than these relief items. I believe if we could introduce programs like irrigation schemes to curb the drought, maybe those would be something that would be a long-term solution that can help, even since most of these cattle raiding are brought about by the fight for water, the fight for these green areas. So I believe if irrigation scheme is introduced, then such would be covered. Then two, like I'd said about the minister for Karamoja, I believe if you want to solve something, you have to involve the people that are facing the challenge. You do not just bring someone from nowhere that they are going to head the solving of the certain problem. So I believe they should involve the people from Karamoja in any step they are making. Maybe if the minister was from Karamoja, it would have been easy for them to know the types of breeds that would be that would fit in Karamoja. And maybe if the minister was from Karamoja, he would take her time to ensure that these relief items reach the people of Karamoja, since she really knows the state in which the people of Karamoja are in. Yeah. So I believe as appointments are being made for different ministerial posts, such should be considered.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Nancy.
Yeah, thank you. One, I think there is need for the Karamojongs to address the internal challenges that they have, which are aspects to do with unity and somehow agreeing on how they can live together, they can coexist regardless of the various differences that they have. And number two, I think there is also need to effectively implement the policies in place, because we have really beautiful, amazing policies. If you read like some of these policies, they are really beautiful, and if they were properly and effectively implemented, I think they would be able to address majority of the challenges that we have in this country, including those that Karamoja is facing. And thirdly, I think there is definitely a need to take up the bottom-up approach, which means we need to start everything from the grassroots. Who are the Karamojongs? What do they need? What have they been? How are they now? Because they keep evolving. Yeah. We're not the Karamojongs of like Amin's regime or post-colonial times. Yes, those factors influence. They can still be used to understand the current situation. But for the most part, the current issues that we are facing are not actually because of what happened 100 or 10 years or 50 years ago. They're actually because of, Karamojongs are trying to catch up. We're trying to, to adopt some of these alternative livelihood, sources of livelihood that you're talking about. Yeah. So how do we do that? We need capital. So why don't we sell? Why don't we steal and sell, get money, and then start maybe a shop or something like that? So there is need to understand the dynamics around what is actually happening, right? What is the cause now? Instead of saying, so cattle raiding in the past was because of, amassing wealth and all that respect, and which is not the case right now. So there's need to do a little bit of more research into what is happening so that we can come up with really concrete solutions that will be able to solve what is happening right now. Yeah.
Yes, please. Your recommendations.
I think the biggest thing that Karamoja needs is investment, especially in social services. Building more schools, roads, health services, availing them with clean water. That is the first step to development. We're talking about mindset change and all of that. But if someone doesn't have food or water or education, I don't think they're going to be really looking for mindset change. The second thing I can talk about is using innovation. Because as much as we recognize that the Karimojong are nomads, I think they've lost too many of those cows. And I don't think they're really going to get them back, however much the government says they're trying to use affirmative action to give them back those cows and such. So I think there's need for innovation. Yes, Karamoja is semi-arid, but this is the 21st century. We can use technology, climate adaptive strategies, to find ways of growing crops, utilizing those areas where green things can grow, I think. I don't know if they're oases or something of that sort. But yes, investment and innovation is very vital in answering this Karamoja question. But in order to achieve all of that, there is need for political will. Unless the government is willing, then all of these are just words.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. But I think just to wrap this up is that, Karamoja deserves better. They are part of us. We should love them. We should accord them you know, the same sort of dignity that everyone else, you know, clamors for, but also, you know, their right to really live and to, you know, associate and practice what they really feel, you know, is best for them should really be exposed out there. So I think that is it for Karamoja. Let's shift gears a bit to the USA Africa Summit on Democracy. Shall you just use 20 minutes on this particular topic? And you know that the USA, for example, has been or continues to hold, you know, summits across the world. And we have witnessed the vice president, you know, having these tours on democracy around the world, you know, trying to preach aspects of democracy and I believe rule of law. And, you know, let's just evaluate what that means for us as a continent here in Africa, but also our recommendations. So basically, as young people, our views regarding youth participation in the democratic dispensation of our country's issues around civic rights and, you know, and democratic space, issues around electoral reforms, among others. So I began with you in the first. Let me begin with Nancy. Nancy, I don't know, democracy, what the USA is trying to, you know, to put out that African continent. Is Africa ready for democracy anyway? Is the first question. Or we want to agree with what Dambisa Moyo said, that African states need a benevolent leader, and all these democratic principles of, you know, periodic elections are only a waste of resources. We shall get there when we are ready. But for now, I don't know. What do you think about this whole USA Democracy Summit?
I think democracy is relative. That's what I would think. I don't think that the US has the moral authority, I would say, to come and preach democracy to Africa.
Okay.
Because, I mean, these are whole different contexts. We have different history. We have different cultures, right? So I do not think that the US coming and preaching to us, giving us their tailor-made sort of democracy and telling us this is what we should adopt. This is what democracy should look like, right? And this is what the whole world should actually, you know, adopt. I think that is, first of all, very wrong. And it applies to anything else, really. When you're addressing issues, I think coming up with tailor-made solutions is very key. And the same would apply to democracy. You cannot say that you're going to Uganda or you're going to Karamoja. Let's just take back to Karamoja. And you want to lead, or you want Karamoja to adopt a leadership system that is the same as Buganda, which has kingdoms, right? So I feel like that's where the US is going wrong. And they want us to take their approach to democracy, right? Which may not work, which may backfire. Which is the same with if you go and impose something to somebody, at the end of the day it may backfire, because there are probably certain aspects in that society that may not support the kind of system that you want them to adopt, right? So again, some changes, some amendments would have to be made to say, okay, now this is the kind of democracy that would work for Uganda, right? So, of course, there are certain aspects of democracy that are good, that, you know, every society would work with if they were to adopt. But I feel like several other clauses would have to be amended to work for different countries or different societies or different regions. So yeah, I think that's my take on it.
Yes, Presta. If you had Nancy, she said that the USA has no moral authority to lecture us on democracy. And perhaps rightly so, because this is the same country that we saw what they did to Libya. You know, we know their acts of aggression that were seen by the globe in Afghanistan. You know, so I don't know, maybe neither here nor there. But I don't know, what is your own perspective regarding the USA and their attempts to, you know, preach democratic principles across the world?
I think the attempt is probably well-intentioned, but it can rub African states across, you know, the wrong way. I'm going to use an example of the Anti-Homosexuality Act that the Parliament recently passed. Many Ugandans believe that, for example, homosexuality is a foreign concept to this continent. It's an African blah blah blah, which it is not, of course. But the West has, this 21st century has been very great for, human rights and, and gay rights and all of that. And most African states should I say, captive to religion and, religious beliefs. So while the West was, preaching gay rights, the African states, it was rubbing them off the wrong way. They're like, you can't tell us what to do. This is our own country. We'll decide what we do. And I think that's why we have seen this trend of, all this anti-homosexual, legislation. And if you go on social media and in the comment section, Ugandans are very proud of themselves. They're like, we are ridding ourselves of this Western imposed ideology and all of that. So, in attempting to spread democracy to Africa, the West might actually be doing the opposite. The way homosexuality is African, and now we have rejected it because they said that, because we're advocating for it, is that somewhere we might actually end up rejecting democracy. Yet traditionally African societies had their own forms of democracy. I think what they are trying to do is actually an interference of the principle of sovereignty of other states. But on the other hand, we can't talk sovereignty much when all our budgets, our hospitals, education systems, they are being funded by this donor money. All these immunization campaigns, UPE, USE, building roads, all of it it's either US aid, UK aid, it's all aid money. So in the end, although African states do not want the US to come and preach to us democracy, it's not like we can say much about them doing it, because we, in this kind of case, really do not have any options. But I think democracy in Africa should be organic. Democracy isn't something that is imposed on people, like, be democratic or something of that sort. No, it is people waking up one day and they're like, these are the values that we hold dear, and we are going to advocate for them, and we want to bring about change in this state. In all the countries that we can call democracies, nobody forced them to be democracies. Nobody sold to them that ideology. They realized that there was something wrong in the system. They mobilized, overthrew that system, and built a system that suits them. And African states, most of us are young nations. Uganda is only at 60 years of age as an independent state. The US has existed for more than, I think it's what now, 300 years. So they've had that time, trial and error. And I think we should give African states the grace to try out different systems of government, to fail and try again until we find something that actually suits us. Yeah.
Wow. Very amazing. Peterson, the issue of democracy, our sisters here seem to suggest that, democracy is relative, and, states should be able to have the sovereignty to define what works for them.
Yeah, true. Like she said, if we are to realize Westernization has become a very big challenge in Africa. Every country is trying to adopt according to the Western life, so, and the way of ruling. But one thing US has failed to understand is every country or every continent, they have different way they perceive democracy. Some people might think democracy is the freedom to do whatever you want and to vote any person you want. And but if you go to Western countries, they have their different way of ruling. So I believe USA should set a pace. Let's say, maybe a pace, I can call it a pace, for us to learn from, us as African countries. But they do not have a mandate to guide us or to tell us what we should follow concerning democracy. They should actually set their own, how do I call it? They should set a pace.
Their own standards, maybe.
Their own standards regarding democracy. And if us as Africans find it good to us, appealing to us, then we can boldly can benchmark from them. But for them coming out and saying, you know what, Uganda, you have to do this. Kenya, you have to do this. I do not feel that is the right way I think it should be done. So, like she had said, you see, we have different perception towards something, like anti-homosexuality, the law against homosexuality. You hear Ugandans are against. They want it. They want it implemented. Actually, most Africans want it implemented. But outside countries, they are against it. They are saying it is a right, and according to our culture, it is not a right.
It actually is.
It is a right. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, freedom to what? To associate and to choose.
But according to African values, it is totally against our cultural values.
It isn't.
According to African values. So I believe, like I've said, USA should set standards. Yeah, like so if what it did in let's say Libya, we don't call that democracy. It is trying to dictate, to be. It is trying to show that it has supreme powers over actually the entire world, which is not true. Yeah, it should actually advise, but not command or demand. Yes.
Hamirah, the USA African Summit on Democracy.
On my side, I am going to bring it together with the US African Summit or the Prime Minister or Vice President coming to Africa with the reports of Putin coming to Africa. The reason she is in Africa is probably the same reason Putin is in Africa. One wants to spread communism, the other wants to spread democracy. To give these two sides one name, I'll call it neocolonialism. At the end of the day, all these parties want to sell us their ideologies and probably still keep giving us the paracetamol example I kept giving, like they still give us a little bit of the aid while they extract all the resources out of us and take them back to their countries. So for me, when it comes to neocolonialism and this ideologies of communism and democracy, a friend of mine once said something, and I remember I almost cried, but I didn't because I was around people. And she said, democracy is an ideology. So many people have abused so many human rights and violated so many human rights, killed so many people trying to achieve. Now, is it really something good if we are burying people every day because of this ideology? Is it really something good if civilizations are being destroyed because of this ideology, is it really good if children are robbed of their parents and mothers of their children and their husbands because of this ideology? For me, I want to bring us as a continent back to the concept of trying to develop ourselves independent of all this Western culture and the North. And how can we do that is by standing and saying, we shall not sell to you our oils, our fuels, we shall not sell to you our raw materials. If you want them, come develop them from here. This is how China gets to where she is right now. This is how Japan has gotten to where they are right now. You understand? Because they had to actually question these people to bring the development in their countries. But every time they keep taking our raw materials, our resources back to their countries, they keep bringing us back peanuts. You understand? And robbing us of our economic development, our socialization. And every time someone has an upper hand on your livelihood, then this is how they force you into implementing their ideologies in your countries.
Yeah.
Let's not forget, he mentioned Libya, and let's not forget Libya was one of the well-developed countries in Africa, and it had had one president for so many years. You understand? So when you have the right president, I don't think we even need to go through the whole ruckus of elections and campaigns. I have personally been fully understanding of 2 elections in this country. And trust me, after my second one, I didn't want to see any more elections. I would rather we get that money, invest it in probably something else, something developmental, instead of us wasting money. And while we're wasting that money, lives are being lost. People are losing their lives. Mothers are being robbed of their children. And for that period of the campaign and election period, there's a lot of disruption in safety and security and the peace of the country. And everyone is like, I don't know, I received so many calls from my mom in the period of campaigns, elections, just to look where I am. And imagine that kind of life where you're living in insecurity of, I could bury my own tomorrow. So my point is, when a country has the right leadership, they develop. And Gaddafi gave us an example of that. You understand? Right now, we are living in the reason Putin is in Africa, the reason Kamala Harris is in Africa, is because they want to keep the hold they have been having, the grip they have been having on us. Of course, Putin wants to expand his foreign policy and have a grip on Africa. But US wants to keep the grip it has been having on us for so many years. You understand? And I'm talking about US, but this time I'm actually also coming for the NATO countries. We well know the projects that are fully here, but they're benefiting these countries. We are drilling fuel only to sell it to a country, to a company in France. Cocoa is being extracted from Ghana only to sell it to the US. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? And we leave our people with only the peanuts of the raw materials. Yet, if these countries really wish the best for Africa, let them take the initiative and come and actually bring the factories in Africa. Let us produce our raw materials and develop them from here. Then we can sell them to them. You get? So let's not pretend that these people care about our democracy. These people care about our livelihoods. They do not care about us. We are just a pawn in their game, period.
Wow. What a way to bring this show to an end. Colleagues, thank you. Can I give you 10 seconds just to say goodbye? And I'll insist, only 10 seconds, please. You have to be out of here.
Like saying goodbye. That's it. The 10 seconds are already done.
Presta, I'll begin with you in 10 seconds.
This topic was meant to be about the youth, but we didn't get to that. All I can say is that the youth can leverage the channels of power that they have. I think while introducing ourselves, 2 of us said that we are activists, one climate and the other
Human rights.
Human rights. So the youth and young people can use those channels of power through activism to to create about a democracy, freedom of expression, freedom of gathering, and all those other words that we need in this country. Thank you.
Yes, Nancy.
Karamoja. That's why we came here, right? In the first place. Like, I think I'll borrow a little from what Kidega said earlier, that Karamoja deserves better, right? And it's been ongoing for long. And I really pray that such talks actually pay off and they go a long way in influencing changes that will benefit Karamoja. Thank you.
Yes, Peterson.
Yeah, thank you. To my fellow youth, there is a very big tendency of big political figures using us as youth to make a statement for them on their behalf. So, to my fellow youth, I advise you, please do not be used, because you only lose your life for yourself and for your parents. Thank you so much.
Yes, Hamirah.
To the world, because I believe even the old people still have a chance to leave us with a sensible country and a sensible environment. Demand for what you think you would want to leave for your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. And the youth, let's make sure we leave this planet a little much better than our elders left it for us or are leaving it for us. Thank you very much.
Well, I can't thank you enough. Peace, Nancy, Peterson, and Hamirah, thank you for making the time to be on our show this week. Of course, to the technical team, thank you for ensuring that our viewers get this show right on time. That's it from us. I wish you a lovely afternoon. See you next week, same time, same place.